today we have Kadin Love, who I'll let share a little bit more about himself and what he does.
Yeah, my name is Kadin Love. I'm a community organizer and writer. I've been doing community organizing and advocacy work for around 10 years here in the state of Mississippi as well as statewide and nationally. Yeah, and I'm just really happy to be here and talk with James. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So to start off with everything, it's a safe space. I like to get a check in, kind of with everybody, see how everything is going life wise, kind of 1 to 10. Share as little bit as you want, share as much as you want, and then I can share a little bit about what's kind of going on with my life as well.
For sure. Uh, if I had to rate life right now, it would probably be like a 7 out of 10. Like, I'm in a space where I'm doing better financially than I have. Like it's probably the best I've been financially. But I'm also like more stressed than I usually
Yeah,
am.
yeah.
Just in dealing with the pressures of work and also things popping off in my personal life that are making me shift in certain ways. But I'm not mad at it. I'm doing better than a lot of folks. So I acknowledge that, but there's still room for improvement and like room for growth. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm doing okay.
Glad to hear that. For me, I'd probably say it's like an 8 or 8.5, kind of in that range. Nothing too crazy going on. Definitely loving how the podcast is rolling through, things of that nature, and get myself going with things at work or whatnot, even though it's kind of slow at work at the moment. But that's actually a good spell because it can be pretty crazy at work, actually, with the different
Mhm.
projects that we could have. So, but personal life, everything's going pretty good too. So, nothing I really can complain about. So that's where it's at for me.
Okay, that's what's up, man. I'm glad to hear you're doing all right.
All right, this is something that I start off with all of my guests. At what point, at what moment did you know, or did someone tell you that you had the gift for the current profession that you have?
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one. Probably when I was like 14, I imagine. Um, yeah, I was doing like a summer program at the time that really centered on civil and human rights work in different ways, but also in educating young people about the history of civil and human rights work and also like contextualizing everything to like the current moment where we were in 2014. And so that was kind of the first time folks had pointed out that I had something of value to say in those kind of spaces, and also that I'm a good listener. So I always kind of
Mm,
took that and carried it with me. And so that was probably, if I had to name a moment, that's probably the biggest one. Just hearing folks that I respect, older people, observing me, because I don't think I'd ever been like observed in that way to where folks are like really paying attention to how I move in spaces. And so hearing that feedback kind of helped me shape out who I am, who I wanted to be,
ah,
and highlight some of my positive and negative traits over like
mm-hmm.
the past 10 years.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what it is for me.
All right. So it's the first sibling duo slash group that I have on the podcast. Actually, brother was my first guest and everything. I know other people have siblings and everything of that nature, but just kind of share a little bit how you feel about where your brother's at in his journey and how how proud of you. I'm pretty sure you are of him and everything.
Yeah, man. Cam is dope. We're similar in a lot of ways and different in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
I think our upbringings were like slightly different. So I was born in Hattiesburg, uh, and Cam was born. I think he was born in Meridian, either Meridian or Hattiesburg, but he grew up most of his life in Madison County, whereas like the first 5 or 6 years of my life were in a few different places. But his direction, he's really smart, as smart as me, is if not smarter. And he's also really open about how expressive he is. Like I think he's
Hmm.
delved into his art in a way that like I never was really able to. Like I did all right with my poetry, and I got it in front of some people that like I really respected. That was really really dope. But it's awesome to see him kind of diving as deep into it as he is, and also how well he's doing in school. Like he made like a 33 or 34 on the ACT. Like he's really, really brilliant. And it pops off in a lot of different ways. So I'm just really proud of him. And he's growing up really, really fast. Like it's
Yeah, yeah,
wild that he's 19 years old. You know what I mean? Like I can't believe
I
it.
understand.
Yeah, but yeah, real proud of him and really glad that he was your first guest, man. He's yeah, yeah, I'm really proud to be his brother for sure.
Feel the same type of sentiments for my two younger siblings. I mean, I know my older sister, but I didn't grow up with her at all, so it's a little different. But seeing them do things that they're doing now, and especially when my sister's getting back into school, and then my youngest sister, she's 17 now, gonna be a senior at Ridgeland in the fall. So it's crazy seeing how fast they grew up.
Yeah, yeah. This is wild. Like it's hard to believe. Like I said, I graduated 7 years ago now, and that doesn't
Yeah,
seem that doesn't seem real. So like to see him already graduate and doing all the things that
hmm
he's doing is like a real shock. You know, I'm still getting used to it. So yeah, but that's dope.
All right. So poetry. I know you mentioned a little bit just a moment ago. Uh, when was the moment when your mind tapped into that side of like creative artistry of poetry?
Yeah, I was young, so I'm thinking eighth grade is probably when it fully like became a thing. Started probably in seventh grade. I had an English teacher back in the day, Miss Clark, that really pushed me in a lot of different ways to kind of explore artistry. And I was somebody who was dealing with anxiety in a lot of different ways. I didn't know it was anxiety at the time, but just this feeling that I had something to get off my chest and using this as like an outlet to do so. And so I would get mad at a teacher and like write a poem to like put my feelings in a way that I could digest and like understand. And of course, that applies like all the other emotions like teenage love and all the other things, and also like my frustration with the world, like coming up, dealing with the traumas of seeing all the national protests and things, and being able to
Mm-hmm.
put my feelings into words and also to read other people and get other folks' feedback on my work. So yeah, it was probably yeah middle school, but eighth grade is when I really was like, this is a thing I want to do. So
Yeah.
yeah,
How'd you work up the courage to start to share some of your poetry, like posting on social media, different things like that, going to open mic nights and different things, maybe even sharing it with some of your friends? Like, where'd that courage come from?
you know, I was really just 13 and bold. Like it was really awkward and it was really cringy, but I was like, hey, I think it's good. Read it. You know what I mean? I think as I got older, I became a bit more self conscious about it. But like when I was
Mm,
13, 14, it was like, yeah, you got to read this. I think it's good. It wasn't all that good, to be fair. But I think when you're young and you find something that's really exciting, you want to actively share it with people. And
oh yeah.
so, yeah, I did a whole lot of that. Um, and as I got older, I became like more protective of it. I would send it to like folks
Mm,
or artists that were like already on to like get feedback. So like I sent it like to like Erica Badu at one point. She didn't reply, but like she followed me on Twitter, and I was like, that was some cool validation. And then
hey,
there's
hey.
a singer named Ariba who really vibed with it, and she works with a lot of folks like J. Cole and other people.
Mm,
So seeing her like repost my art and like comment on my page was like really really cool. Uh, and then yeah, I don't really do open mics that often. Really, I have
ah,
to. It's not necessarily a nervousness thing. It's just I'm really out of practice. Like I would do it
mm,
in school sometimes. I did it a couple times in college. I've done one or two open mics here, but it's just the comfortability in the space. And then also I don't write as often as I used to. So like finding a really good performance piece, because like performing
oh
as an
yeah,
art
yeah.
is different than writing. Like you can
Mm-hmm.
write something, but it might not be the best performance piece. And so trying to find things where I can get into a certain pocket and feel like I can give the crowd something that they enjoy is yeah, it's a different dichotomy. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but I want to get more active in that space again. Yeah, I just have been out of practice.
Not gonna lie. Until about maybe junior year of high school for me. You would have been a senior. I don't know. For some reason, I just thought poetry was kind of lame. Um, I didn't realize how simplistic poetry is, and that it's literally like the easiest form of expression when it comes to music and like singers. Literally like writing a poem or something of that nature, or just the structure of like a poem compared to like a structure of a song and how similar they have their abilities and everything. Um, but I'm not gonna lie, like reading some of your stuff that you did share, like that kind of helped me change my mind a little bit about it and thinking about other people sharing their poetry too. So it's kind of like a full circle moment for me now. I don't ever know if I'd ever do anything performance wise, but I have a lot more respect for poetry and like the poetry community and that side of artistry now. Even though for a while I thought it was kind of lame
Yeah.
for a little bit.
Nah, that's dope. Well, I'm glad that I was able to help you kind of come full circle around it. And poetry is lame and it's awkward, and sometimes your stuff sucks. Like it's okay to say so. Like I look back at some of the old stuff I posted, a lot of it
Mm,
is still up. I keep it up just as a reminder that like I'm
mhm.
growing because that was mad corny. But when you're expressing yourself honestly, you're gonna say corny things, and I think
Yeah.
like as a writer, and poetry and like all expressions of like art and music are
Mm,
so important. Like even in high school, I was battle rapping. Like we'll be in the in the cafeteria getting raps off, or like writing bars or things like that, and listening to like Andre 3000 and Tupac and
mhm,
these folks who knew how to convey different things with words. Like thinking about how somebody constructs a verse is the coolest thing ever. Like Black Thought, like the way his mind works is crazy. Fonte has a whole verse where he doesn't rhyme a word, but the way that it sounds will make you think that he rhymed a word. Like it's a really beautiful form of expression, and even for like us as Black people, poetry has been an outlet for freedom in a lot of different ways. Like
oh yeah.
that's how we expressed ourselves during slavery. When you think about Langston Hughes, when you think about so many Southern folks who like used our really deep Southern dialect in order to like express themselves and to build communities. Like so much of our conversations and our hidden messages were conveyed through music and through slam poetry. So I honor that a lot in my work. Whenever I need to feel inspired, I got like an old book of African American poetry that I read through
Mm,
that goes to the decades. And so thinking about all those things, like even like meeting Nika Giovanni when she was down here some years ago and hearing her speak, like yeah, it's an extension of like who we are. So I always like to honor it as an art form. So, but yeah, but it's lame. It is lame. So you're not you're not wrong in that.
Speaking on that, nice segue. How much of an intersection do you believe music and poetry have?
Yeah, I think that they inform one another. Like
Mm,
so, of course, there's music that has lyrics, right? When you're thinking about hip hop, the bass is poetry. It's rhythm
yeah.
and rhyme. That's the heart of it. R&B, country, folk, um, rock. All these things have a basis in poetry, at least on a
Hmm.
lyrical sense. But musicality in general, thinking about instrumentation, it's a form of just expressing your emotions. So when I'm
Hmm.
listening to Coltrane, uh, it still feels like poetry to me because
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
conveying a real emotion. Like when I listen to Miles Davis, like or I listen to I'm in a sentimental mood, like these are like wow, like you were going through it. Like she broke your heart. You're not saying any
Yeah.
words, but I feel it. Uh, and so I think that they work in tandem. They work together. Neither is better than the other, but like in a perfect combination, they influence one another. Like when you think about
Yeah.
hip hop, the best hip hop and R&B is a merging of a lot of different genres. Like we love
Hmm.
to Pimp a Butterfly because the Pimp a Butterfly is jazz, and
Literally.
we love 3000 because 3000 will hop on a track and rap, but also will play the flute and or play the guitar
Hmm.
and express himself in that way. Um, I love Prince as an artist because yes, he's a poet, he's a wordsmith, but he's a multi instrumentalist. Like he
Oh
was able to
yeah.
do all kinds of great things. Or even when you think about Michael, sometimes you can't convey what you feel with words. So Michael will just hop on the track and vocalize or scream, and even
Hmm.
those screams became iconic because we know what feeling they convey, right? So uh, everything works in tandem, and music is an all-encompassing genre, and putting it all together is what makes what we love. And so I encourage folks to just keep experimenting, keep thinking about how we can bring genres and expressions together, and do whatever you need to do in order to get that emotion off. Like I really love Andre in his transition, not
Mm.
because he's like the best jazz musician ever, because like I've seen folks like critique his ability or like that he was flat, and I'm like, you know what, valid. You know what I mean? Like as a saxophonist, like there are a couple times the three stacks is
Yeah,
flat, um,
yeah.
but just the idea that he's choosing the medium within which to express himself was like really really dope, because sometimes I can't do it with words, so can I do it with the
Mm.
saxophone, and will that get it off? Or even the idea of sometimes not playing in tune or not playing in flat, or like playing flat. Like he had a line, I can't remember if he got it from Jimi Hendrix or not, but it was on a B.O.B. song where he said, "They keep asking me why I don't play in tune." He's like, Do you cry in tune? You know what I'm saying? Do you, you know what I mean? Like sometimes bending notes, especially as a saxophonist, and like our band teacher used to hate me for this, like bending notes or like playing with volume. That's jazz. Like it's classical music to a certain extent. It's always in tune. But like bending our notes to convey our feelings is like a really really important aspect of the genre, and not always being on, like some of our favorite singers can't sing, like
Oh yeah.
like on the technical
Like
level.
for real.
You know what I mean?
Like really being able to have that ability, that musicality behind it. Like some people don't know. Some people.
Yeah, like we can critique a lot of singers, but their ability to convey emotion. Like J.
Mm.
Cole is not a great singer,
Yeah.
but sometimes Kendrick Lamar is not a great singer. Drake ain't a great singer, but your ability to convey things. Kanye West was
Yeah.
never a great singer, right? But 808s, you could relate to the feeling, or even when folks critique certain
Hmm.
singers, like a lot of folks be coming for Alicia Keys, but Alicia Keys knew how to convey emotion like
Oh
adequately
yeah.
in order to make these really big, huge anthems that made people feel things. Or even folks like Pharrell can't sing like that, but Pharrell knows how to structure a song and knows how to get the feeling across. And then
Hmm.
sometimes giving it to the right singer can elevate it, like a Whitney, a Mariah, a Beyonce. Um,
Yeah.
but all the things work in tandem, and music is about ultimately like how do you feel and how are you getting that feeling across. If I'm sad, am I always singing in perfect pitch? No. That's why we love Anthony Hamilton. Like Anthony Hamilton has such like a wild voice. Not to say he's not
Oh
technically
yeah.
cool, but when he's feeling something, he'll go a little off the key a little bit to let you know, like, Charlene, I need you. You know what I mean? Or I'm going through it. So yeah, it's just dope. I love music a lot. It's one of my favorite things like in the world.
Actually hitting these transitions pretty well. Mentioned you're a saxophonist. We were both in band together. Played trombone. Um, at this point now, though, how often are you sharing your saxophone gifts?
Yeah, I haven't played in a minute, man. I still love it, and I want to like buy. I want to get a professional sax at some point,
Mm.
and I want to delve deeper into like my writing, my poetry, my artistic side, like start making songs again. Um, but just finding a time where I'm at peace enough to do so,
Uh,
because
that's
right
so
now
good.
my everything is kind of in flux, and I write better when I have a sense of like quiet or at peace, because it eases those feelings out of you. And I haven't had that feeling in a while, so uh, I want to do that. But like the sax is always, it's still here. You know what I mean? Every once in a while, I'll dust it off and I'll do a freestyle on particular albums, on instrumental songs like Michelle and Cello, her Bitter album.
Mm.
Like I remember one time I just sat and did a whole session playing on all of those, because like every song on that album for the most part is in the same key. So like freestyling on it was really really dope. So yeah, I want to get back into it. I'm still good. I still know how to play. It's just finding the time and the space to do so. Uh, but yeah, no, saxophone is one of the best things that ever came into my life. I'm not gonna hold you. Just the ability to like express yourself, and it was something I was good at. And we were all hella competitive, like going for the top spot, all of that. So I really appreciated it in high school, and then in college we did some really cool stuff with the jazz band at Hines Community College. We almost played at the Apollo in New York. Ended up falling through at like the last
Oh man.
minute, But yeah, we were able to just come in and like speaking of like music, we would go and we would do jam sessions like
Mm,
really really cold. Like we had a really dope pianist now who's like a photographer in Jackson. I
mm.
can't think of his name right now, but he was really cool. And he would come in and he would like play a lick, like a Stevie Wonder lick, and then our drummer would just come up with a beat, and then me and the other saxophonists would just come up with something on the fly. And now we're playing for like 15, 20 minutes, just making stuff up, and it sounds
Yeah.
good. Like we would go to like this place like on the Gulf Coast, like this some competition or festival or something, and they just had equipment just sitting out that anybody could use.
Mm.
And I had my sax, and we kind of were sitting around like the other band folks, and it was getting hella boring up in there. Like nothing was moving. Uh, so we all kind of just got up, took a seat, and like gave everybody entertainment, like as they were going in for their evaluations. And it was cold. It was so cold. And other folks were like jumping in. Folks we didn't know would like do freestyles on like the flute. And we
Oh
kept it
wow.
going for like a half hour. And when I think about music, like I'm like, that's what it is. Like
Yeah.
freestyling is such a big part of
Yeah.
like black musical genre, like the lexicon. Like I love it. And so that's the part of the sax like I always kind of carry with me is your ability to like think on your feet and create things in the moment with other people. Like it builds community. So yeah, nah, it's hard, and I'm gonna do better. I'm gonna play more often. Um, yeah, yeah, I always love the sax for sure.
Was the saxophone your first option when we were doing like our band tryouts back then?
I knew sax is what I wanted to play because sax seemed
Mm,
like the coolest. Like I was thinking Kenny G. I was thinking the
mm,
'80s. So like saxophone is sexy. I can do some things with this. Um, and shoot, it was such a long time ago. I remember the sax was an option. Uh, and there were a couple others. I think they might have wanted me on trombone because I was really big. Like I was
mm.
big enough to be a trombone player. Because I think yeah, sixth grade I was probably I wasn't 6 feet yet, but I was still like 5'10", 5'11", probably. So they were probably looking at me for a trombone. But the sax ended up working for me, and that's what I wanted
Yeah.
anyway. So it was perfect.
That's good. All right, so you have a psychology associate's degree from Hines Community College, and then a bachelor's from USM Southern Miss.
Hmm.
For folks who don't know, what led you to choosing the psychology path?
Yeah, psychology was always really interesting to me. Uh, when thinking about like the work I do around civil and human rights work, particularly racial justice,
Mm,
what makes people think that way, and what can we do in order to mediate like this kind of implicit bias? Like we're stepping into a world that has all this context. And how do we look through the context in order to get to truth? Was like a big part of like why I was interested in psychology. Because folks aren't racist or homophobic or transphobic for no reason. Like we're raised,
no,
we're indoctrinated, and how do we check ourselves effectively? And then also looking at psychology as a thing that isn't usually studied as it pertains to Black people or like marginalized people. Psychology is generally led through a white lens, and because of that, there are so many blind spots in the study. Like when I was coming up through college, this is probably 2018, they did a study that said that folks who live in marginalized communities or in urban environments where there's a lot of gang violence experience the same amount of PTSD as people who lived through Vietnam. And for folks who have been in that environment, know people from that environment, like that's not shocking. Like it's like,
no.
why are we just now doing that study in 2018? But because they don't center marginalized
Mm-hmm.
people in the studies that they do, this is like a huge revelation. And then also around that time when I was coming into college, we were seeing a really big uptick in trigger warning, y'all, for youth suicide, right? Um, and thinking about one having a younger brother who was what 10, 11, 12 at this point, right? He was in that age demographic, and also seeing the uptick in violence that we were seeing in media. I mean, post Trayvon, we were seeing just black people dying on television
Yeah.
really consistently, and also somebody who was on Twitter during the heyday. Um, you were seeing a lot of those things directly before they got to the news and got blurred. We were seeing like real violence, and it was having, and is having a really strong effect on Black children's mental health. It was the first time I think in history where Black children were, I think they were number one on suicide and suicidal ideation, whereas beforehand that wasn't necessarily the case. Like in the 80s and 90s, we were always relatively close to the bottom on those sort of stats. Um, but things are shifting, and our awareness of the trauma that we all face was becoming more and more prominent. And I always tell people, because we have a tendency to dismiss the feelings of children a lot, but telling them, like, understanding the kids are seeing the same world that you are. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
depressed and you're 30, and you have more control over your circumstances. Like, you don't have complete control, but more control, right? You can go to a different job, you can move to a
Yeah.
different city,
Yeah.
if you have the financial means. Kids have no control of their environment, um, and they just have to sit and live with their circumstances with the understanding that they can't do anything about them. And so, if you're not looking at that from a psychological lens and trying to get into that, then it's going to end up with a problem that's going to continually grow. And so that's why I chose
Mm-hmm.
psychology. I wanted to look into real actionable solutions around how we engage with one another. Uh, but yeah, so that answers the question in a long way.
I love it. Psychology for me didn't really hit me until freshman year in college when I took what's the name of that class? General psychology. General psychology one. And it made me really start to think about a lot of my alternate routes that I could take, honestly. And for a minute, I actually took a few psychology classes and took like one psychology class as well, sociology class as well,
Hmm.
um, during my first 2 years in college and everything. And it kind of started to fall in love with it and just being able to have a different outlook on understanding how people's mindsets come to where they are and the different things that they go through when they grow up, but also how they express that as they get older and become functioning adults too. It made me start to have a little conflict, not a major one, but a little conflict on whether I wanted to continue engineering. But I love psychology, honestly. And if I would have did it over again, I probably would have went for a psychology degree, honestly.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and also how psychology and sociology kind of work together.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I love psych a lot, and also psychology introduced me to a lot of concepts that I hadn't like been privy to, like
Mm-hmm.
gender as a social construct. It was like
Mm.
I learned that through a psychology class, and that's something I should have learned in middle school and in high school.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
but learning about like gender as a spectrum, sexuality as a spectrum, really kind of opened my eyes to a lot of like how transphobia and homophobia work, and it informed a lot of what I was doing on campus, like trying to start a club and doing all these things and trying to educate people because I was just so excited to learn about things that I didn't know before. So yeah, psychology definitely was a bridge into like other things. So I'll always appreciate it, and I'm glad I got a degree in it. It informs a lot of my work that I do today. So yeah,
It's good to hear that you're still using your degree to its maximum ability. Uh, an activist and abolitionist. Uh, why did you decide on these two political tracks in conjunction?
yeah. Uh, Yeah, activist. I don't use the word activist as much as I used to. I prefer the term community organizer. Um,
Okay, okay.
just because I think it more directly aligns with like the work that I do. I
Mm-hmm.
think activist is often like self centered as an idea,
Mm-hmm.
and deals more in celebrity, which is like yeah, going back, I remember looking at the world like we're thinking post Trayvon, so
Mm-hmm.
2012. I was 12 or 13 years old, and that was a really big moment for, I guess, our generation since
Oh
we're
yeah.
close to the same age. I credit like three big moments in our generation. The first one being Katrina in 2004/5, like thinking about how that affected people, and being on the ground and witnessing Katrina like in real hand and in real time. Definitely, it was the first major political event of our lifetime, and then coming off of Katrina, thinking about when Obama got elected,
Oh yeah.
that
Yeah.
shifted a lot. But Trayvon was really Trayvon's murder was really the big eye-opening moment for a lot of us, and then also the verdict that
Mm-hmm.
happened afterwards. Like it was shell shock. Like I couldn't believe it. And so when I'm 12, 13, I'm thinking about what outlets I have to express this kind of anger and disappointment that I'm feeling. And I didn't have really any avenues for that at the time. Like I was just going to school, but this anger and this feeling was definitely just there. Like it was ever present. Like it wasn't going away. And so as I got older, I got into like some summer programs that really taught me about the systemic nature of like racism and how it works, like white flight and gerrymandering,
Oh yeah.
in these terms that kind of take, because like I think often we think about racism as a social thing, and it's almost abstract. Like this is a racist person. We individualize it. Yeah, but I was joined the debate team, and other things that gave me an opportunity to learn more, not just about like racism, but also like the political world. How am I engaging with the political world, and also what is my ideology? What do I believe? And over like a number of years, I'm building up that belief like over time. I think when I was younger, my work was like solely on race, like racial justice. I'm black. This is what I care about. And this is my sole focus. But as I got older, started interacting with different spaces. We had a gay straight alliance at my school. One of the homies that I knew was gay and would go there, and I would kind of just sit in and listen. And so like listening to those spaces and being like, okay, this is an issue. Uh, Going into college, um, I'm working in different offices. I'm working with trans folks and thinking about the struggle that they're going through, especially at the same time I'm going to college and I'm learning about gender as a social construct. And like, I'm really tying these things together and building up my ideology over time. And then even like going and thinking about abortion access is
Mm.
the thing. And reproductive justice are the thing that's important. So over time, I'm just listening and I'm absorbing things and I'm adding them to my political ideology. Um, and when it came to abolition, I just really thought about long term, what is it that I want? Like, what is the end goal of my work, right? Um, when I think about a perfect world, like I don't feel comfortable around police. We know that police were created post slavery, right? We know that police exacerbate crimes. They're not a preventative measure. And in my perfect world, if everyone's needs are met, we don't have poor people, folks, you know, are all good. What is the need for police, right? There isn't really one. When I think about prisons, uh, as a psychology major, I know that prisons do not stop crime, right? They actually leave folks worse off when they leave. That's why recidivism rates are so high. And the country relies on recidivism rates in order to
Oh
run. And prisons themselves, like the way that we think about prisons, these big industrial places, that didn't happen until the 80s. Like really, 70s and 80s, when crack and heroin were flooded into communities, that's when they decided that mass incarceration was going to be something that was viable to run the country post slavery. Um, and so when I take all of that into consideration, I'm like, okay, in a just world where everyone's needs are met, there's really no need for prisons. Like the majority of folks in prison are for nonviolent offenses.
Mm-hmm.
And if they are violent offenses, they're usually violent offenses that are exacerbated by a lack of resources. Gang folks fight over very small resources, right? Or even when folks commit murder, it's often because these folks aren't having access to therapy, don't have access to education, things that if they had access to them, these crimes wouldn't happen. And the very small subset of people who are like serial killers or sexual predators, etc., are such extreme outliers in such small aspects of society that if everyone's needs are met, those could be taken care of in any number of ways that aren't huge, large-scale prisons or a militarized police force. So yeah, as I just started reading books like "Our Prisons Obsolete" by Angela Davis, listening to Mariam Kaba, who spoke about abolition, and also just listening to the elders around me, like folks that I know and I trust. Also young people that I was kind of coming up with at the same time. Yeah, we kind of just built out our own identities, our own beliefs. And yeah, and we have these as like our non-negotiables for our work. So that's kind of what led me. into that, and I'm still growing, um, and I'm still learning new things and like disability justice, all these different kinds of things that I'm not an expert on, but I want to learn more about. And so it's a constant evolving process. Like
Hmm.
every other month, I'm like, okay, I'm doing this thing wrong. This is how I can do it better. Um, but surrounding myself with folks who hold me accountable are also who are willing to call me in and let me know where I messed up, and then vice versa is how I continue to like learn and grow. But yeah, that's more or less how I kind of came into the space that I'm in right now.
I love it. It just popped in my head just because I was thinking about it. But how big of a deal do you think it is now for people, kind of in our generation, to be as knowledgeable as they can be when it comes to a lot of the things that you just discussed, and being able to put themselves in positions to be up for the ballots that we have coming up in our political seasons for certain offices that actually can have a major impact, to be able to shed light on some of these things that we know affect marginalized communities the most.
Yeah, I encourage folks to learn as much as possible and pay attention. I think developing a politic and ideology is kind of baseline. And once you develop what it is that you want, your ideas, you can funnel that towards whatever actions you want to take, right? We're in a really tough position right now as a country, to be real. Um, but what I have been encouraged by is that young people are really standing on their principles, right? They're creating boundaries and lines, and you set those boundaries and lines so that you can hold folks accountable when they don't move within those lines. Um, yeah, like for me, elections aren't the biggest thing for me. I think that voting is a tactic. Voting is not revolution, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
We use voting, especially in local elections, in order to adjust our circumstances and create an easier landscape for us to live. But a Democrat or Republican getting in office is not going to liberate us or
No.
like abolish prisons or abolish police. Um, and so acknowledging that, and then also for yourself deciding what is the most important thing for me. If we're in a country that is perpetuating genocide, then if your principle is I'm not voting this election, like I'm with you because you're standing on it. And if you're willing to build out power and build out ways to make the country better in other ways outside of voting, then do that. If you really feel it in your heart that you need to vote in order to stop whatever, do so. But also, don't don't fool yourself into thinking that voting is going to
The end
end
all
all of
be
the
all.
things that are making our lives tougher, right? So acknowledging the truth in some things,
Mm.
and not being as harsh. I think we're really, really harsh often. We're really stuck in our way of doing things, and it makes it, yeah, it causes a lot of friction. Like, yeah, like I definitely encourage people to just really think, and don't just think in the short term. I think that's what we do a lot, and we often think about what we think, what we believe is possible. Like, I don't think prisons are going to be able to end, or I don't think we can abolish police. And realistically, like, prisons are only like 50 years old in the way that we think
Yeah.
about it. Police are being militarized now as we speak. Like, think about the world that you want to live in and work towards that, and that can inform your ability to make decisions or set up boundaries that you want. Um, and so that's it for me. Not everybody has to be a community organizer. Not
Oh
everybody
yeah.
has to be somebody who's on the front lines doing the things. But knowing what you want is so important. Even just like going online or on Twitter and like expressing what you believe or learning or just listening and absorbing information. Um, and then also standing when it's time to stand, even in small ways. If we're not going to McDonald's and we're not buying McDonald's, let's not buy McDonald's. You know what I mean? Those are small things that have a big effect on what we're doing. Um, like solidarity and community to me can be bigger than just being a community organizer or being the activist that's big on the screen. Like, take your time, figure out what you are and aren't willing to do. Are you willing to take a strike at your job? Are you willing to not buy McDonald's and not buy this product for X amount of time? Are you willing to repost this thing? Are you willing to donate money?
Mm.
Are you willing to just have conversations that we feel like are building our ability to like educate our people or educate young folks? Like, figure out your niche because I think everybody can help. Figure out what your niche is. Settle into your niche. Learn your thing, and then follow that as far as you can. And don't accept critique. Be able to grow, but don't be so rigid as rigid. Like, 'cause there are just different ways. Like I'm not always like I'm not the policy guy all the way. You know what I mean? Um, like I've lobbied before, but I'm of no illusion that like me going up to the White House and talking to these people is going to shift things in some extremely major way. I go up there when I need to make marginal changes in order to make things easier for myself and make things easier for my people. Um, but I also acknowledge that like that's an important space because the policymakers and folks that are in policy makes it easier for me to do my thing. Same thing for legal work. Uh, yeah, not everybody gets to be the most radical person making all the radical decisions. Um, but we all, like in the best world, we work together
Yep.
and they create the landscape that makes it easier for me to tear down some of the more harmful systems. But not being so rigid as to say we the policy folks are right and y'all are gonna like it's not it doesn't have to be that combative. Like I know abolitionist lawyers now. I know abolitionist policymakers. Um, that wasn't a thing like 20 years ago, but it is now. Folks are becoming more informed, and we can create new things, and just emphasizing our ability to create new things and not just relying on the old things. And that applies to policy folks, legal folks, the folks that want to vote, and for the activists and organizers, right? If we're seeing the same protests and they're not having any real change, how are we shifting up our tactics? How are we building new things? And how are we using our imagination in order to get out of the things that confine us? Um, so yeah, all of those are big things. And then another thing I neglected to mention is that I'm also anti-capitalist, and that's important too, right? Um, yeah, but just thinking about really top to bottom, what's happening, why does it happen that way, what's the
Hmm.
history of why it's happening that way, and what do we need to get rid of, and what do we need to push forward. Um, if capitalism is the thing that's causing all the problems, and we all recognize that capitalism ain't good, what can we create that's like better for people? Is
Yeah.
it socialism? Is it communism? Is it something entirely different that's more community based? Um, think about it, learn about it, talk about it, and build something. And yeah, that's my only piece of advice, and I'm still in the midst of doing it. But yeah, that was a really long answer. Yeah,
No, we love long answers around here. So, but that was the last bit of that, talking about finding your niche, basically, understanding that we don't all have to be super radical or try to be the policymakers or the people who are being the activists themselves, but having your niche and understanding you can do something as small as literally having conversations, learning a little bit more about what's actually going on, who's being affected the most by this situation, or how we're all being affected in a macro scale about different things too. It's a major thing. For personally for me too, because I wish I would have heard it back in high school because I just felt like I had to be some type of activist or something. But now I know find my niche, find my little two or three things that I know I can actually impact the most, and then be able to be, like you said, have that solidarity in our community and push for that too. It's something that's big for me now. So
yeah, yeah. Like I said, the biggest thing, just knowing yourself and doing something, you know. And it's the small things that impact us the most, you know. Not buying McDonald's, that really does
oh yeah.
shift their ability to like donate to some harmful things, and holding yourself to those principles. And sometimes you fall short, you know. Sometimes it's late at night, you're really hungry, and there's only one thing to do. So giving yourself grace, but also like holding yourself accountable and having folks around you that hold you
Hmm.
accountable, and teach you things. So, yeah, you ain't gotta be big bad, fight the system, fight the power. That's not everybody's thing.
Yeah.
But at least sometimes being in those spaces, learning about it, and seeing what you can do, even if you have a different, like if you got a whole different profession, if you're a doctor, then you can only do the small things because you're gonna be in the OR every day, like 17
Hmm.
hours. So what can you do in those 5 hours to help people out, even if it's small? Um, is the thing. If you can only show up to a rally or a lobby day, cool. You know what I mean? If you can only repost a thing, cool. But just being honest about it and helping out in any way you can, and you'll be straight.
All right. You have experience working for Advocates for Youth, the National Coalition for Sexual Health, People's Climate Innovation Center, and your most recent addition to all of that, being with Julian, a civil and human rights nonprofit. Um, how's it been managing these different career opportunities?
Yeah, it's been different. It's been different. I think I had like a real scattershot approach when it comes to like learning things. So I would bounce around to different organizations like back to back to back because I really just wanted to learn things and have an opportunity to help out in any small way. And so for like the past few years, especially like post 2020, I was doing a lot. From like reproductive justice work to racial justice work to doing rallies and all these different kind of things. So now stepping into the climate and environmental justice space more actively, and now kind of having my first concrete like job,
Mm.
senior level while I'm running a department. And so it's all very, very different. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend everybody do what I do or how I did it. It took a very long time. I did not get paid well for a large amount of it. Um, but at the same time, I had an opportunity to learn a lot. And
Mm.
I also am glad, one, that I'm still young. Like I'm 24. I turned 25 in like a month and a couple days. Um, and I have the opportunity to kind of pay forward all of the positions that I was in because I was so young. Like giving younger people an opportunity to like join some of the organizations that I was in has been a really, really big thing. And then also using my experience to inform my new work to make sure that like I'm keeping people safe, that I'm taking things slowly, that I'm not as reactionary as I was when I was younger, and that I'm trying to be more fair than people
Mm.
were to me coming up. And so as young people, we're like taken advantage of a lot. We're paid a lot less than we deserve to be paid, and folks tend to look down on us when we have perspectives. And I try my best not to do that. I also am trying my best to carve out a space for younger people to have more active roles in the space that I'm in. And I think, yeah, I hope I'm doing a good enough job at doing so. But I'm just glad to be able to fall into a lot of spaces. And there's been a lot of like luck or just building out connections or coincidences. You know, it could be God, it could be any number of things. But yeah, I've just always been blessed to be able to fall into different places and feel like I am where I need to be at different points that were pivotal for the state, for the country, and I'm still yeah I'm in a space now where I'm like okay I feel like I'm doing close to the right thing, but I'm also looking towards the future and building out some
Mm.
new avenues that I might want to do as I kind of grow over the next 5 or 6 years. So yeah, each one of those organizations you named, I was really happy to work with all of them. Every organization comes with positives and negatives, but each of them taught me something. Each of them informed my work, and there are still like great people at each one of those organizations that I still talk to, that I still build with, and that I hope to continue to like build with in the future. So yeah, I'm more or less content with where I'm at right
Happy to hear that. All right, we're hitting the home stretch here. This last segment, just some questions to make your brain roll a little bit of fun questions as well.
now.
So
Okay.
starting off here, if you could travel back to a certain decade or year, what would it be and why?
If I could travel back, mm, let me think. Um, honestly, probably the '90s. Probably. I don't want to go too far back because I'm black. you know. But yeah, I really enjoyed the energy. I enjoy the energy of the '90s. Um, I'm a '90s baby. I was born in '99. But I don't know, kind of the artistry and feeling that like that was the point in time when like hip hop really took off in that particular kind of way. Um, it was really, really, really dope. So it would probably either be then or maybe going back to the really early 2000s.
Mm.
Um, yeah, like as somebody from the South, like I was a kid when like all of the southern
Oh
energy was
yeah.
popping off in hip hop. Um, but like to be somebody a little bit older, I think that would have been a really really cool space to be in. Because as a kid, just looking up and seeing Southern culture kind of be celebrated in a particular kind of way, it was really really hard. Like I was like seeing Wayne pop off, seeing like Usher like go off and like really really top the charts. Um, like the Southern energy was there. Seeing Outkast really pop off, like the culture I was kind of born in is like really really big in a way that it hasn't been. Like Atlanta's been taking stuff off, and we still have some folks popping off, and like just really great energy around. But like the early 2000s, really dope. I also just think club culture seemed a lot cooler back then. Like
Oh yeah.
I love going to the club and like going out nowadays, but like yeah, it's like going to times where they used to dance or like hearing the energy of like a lot of the songs that I love would have been really really dope. So those would probably be the two. I think the '70s would also be kind of cool,
Mm.
um, just because like I love a lot of the '70s records and like hearing all of that energy in real time and those vibes would be cool. But also like the '70s was also hell in a lot of ways. A lot of craziness going on in the '70s. So yeah, but probably like the '90s slash early 2000s would probably be mine. Like from like 1995 to like 2005, I could maybe
Oh yeah.
live in that vibe for a little bit.
If you could give your younger self some advice, what would it be?
Mm. I've been a younger self in advice. I think I would, yeah, I would definitely tell him to check his pride a little bit. For
Mm.
one, I'm a really prideful person. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's negative. But being able to acknowledge that and like sit in that, and then also, I was a good listener coming up, but I could have been better. Um, so yeah, listen more, lean into empathy more often than I do, um, and those would probably be the biggest things. Yeah, listen more, lean more into empathy. I think that like coming up, I was kind of yeah, I was quiet, I was chill. There were opportunities where maybe I could have done more, or I could have like, been more out there, been a bit more expressive, and like I could have had more fun when I was younger. And so like I would encourage myself to kind of do a bit more, get out a little bit more when I was like in high school. Like I was cool in high school, I was cool with all the popular kids or whatever, but have an opportunity to really express myself more actively. Like I look at Cam, um, and like I'm able to take him to like concerts and hang out with him
Oh yeah.
and do
Yeah.
things that like I wasn't necessarily able to do at like 16 or 17. And when I think back on myself, I'm like, it would have been really cool if I had like been out there really have been thinking about like going to concerts. Like I wasn't thinking about going to concerts until I was like 17, and I got to like this J Cole concert because like most don't remember Cole came down in like 2017. It's the only time he ever did a showdown, and I was I turned 18 like the day after the concert.
Oh
So
wow.
I walk up and they turn me away. They was like, "Yeah, dog, you're not old enough." They check the ID, and I was like, "Bro, I turned 18 like tomorrow." And they're like, "Yeah, nah, dog, you out." But if I had like had more opportunity to be more out there, to be more active, like, "Hey, mom, dad, can I go to this concert?" Or like utilizing my big sister more often, like I would definitely encourage myself to do that because I would have had an opportunity to like see more people like in their
Mm.
prime or before they passed. Like I would have loved to have seen Prince, when I was like 13 or 14 or something like that. Had an opportunity to see like a few other artists that were in their prime and no longer are, you know. Um, so that's another thing. I would definitely have mine. I'd be outside a lot more.
All right. Give me three of your favorite poets. It's not an all-time thing, but just people you listen to now or whatnot, or people that you've been reading for a long time too.
Yeah, I take hip hop folks as poets too. So I'm gonna have a couple of them in there. In terms of writers, Nika Giovanni, I'll always love. I love Nika Giovanni a whole lot. Yeah, she just has an ability to speak to the present moment and yeah, and speak to like hypocrisy. Like she's a really good critique and cultural critique in a way. And I also really appreciate that she's imperfect. Like,
Mm.
even in her critiques, sometimes she'll have a blind spot. But her art is always really, really honest. And she's always kind of engaged with folks that are younger. Like her relationship with Tupac is really, really dope to me. Like the fact she has a Tupac tag, like she wrote poems about him, even though there was like this really huge um, gap in their age and like how they were perceived. The fact that they connected and that she still holds that tight is really, really dope to me. So Nikki Giovanni is definitely, definitely up there for me. Um, as a writer, I love 3000. Like I think he's a poet. I think the way that he writes his words is very much so poetry. Um, and like he's one of the few right. Like I'll listen to him and be like, how the hell did you do that? Like how did you put those words together? How did you rhyme these things and get this meaning out there? So 3000 will always be up there for me. And then the last writer is probably Prince. I think Prince was able to really convey emotion in a really particular kind of way that was, yeah, it was really special to me. Um, yeah, just the way he would express hurt and pain and joy and find new ways to do so with words. Is something like I really appreciated. Like, there are even times like I'll catch something new when I listen to him. So I really love him. Uh, yeah, and then other poets that kind of are outside of that realm. Pac, I always love Pac's poetry. I used to read his poetry books and like the work that he wrote, and I always appreciated that he was a poet first in his work. I think Chance the Rapper is a really underrated poet as well, and his ability to like put words together. And thinking about like more traditional poets, like there's always James Baldwin. He's like he's up there. He's the one. He's really really dope. So I love James. Yeah, James Baldwin. Just his writings in general, like his books, his way to like his ability to convey how he felt, or even just like as an artist or as a person, like his time traveling and like having to get away, but always being connected to the work. Yeah, I always love James Baldwin in particular kind of way. Um, but yeah, those are probably like my top. I also love Black Thought. I think
Mm.
Black Thought is really underrated with like how he puts things together. He has a really active like flow and how he does things that I really do appreciate. Um, and then there are other folks that are like underrated that I think are really really cold, like uh, Jeezy. Like I really like. Folks don't think about Jeezy in that conversation, but like coming up, seeing how Jeezy engaged, like the Recession is a really poignant album. Like like the really political album that folks don't give enough credit. Like, yes, was he talking about selling crack? Absolutely, but capturing capturing the moment of like frustration in Black America during like 2008 is really really hard. Like, Put On For My City was an anthem, and it was an anthem for a reason that a lot of folks resonated with. My president is black. Got Barack Obama elected. Listen, he was there. He wasn't. You know what I'm saying? Like that was a moment.
Oh
You know
yeah.
what I'm saying? My president is black. My Lambo is blue. It was a thing. So coming up, I really appreciated that, and it was like a political movement. Like we couldn't even wear white T-shirts or black T-shirts or snowman T-shirts or crosses. This is all because of Young Jeezy. Like he really was as much of a musical movement as it was like a political movement. I really appreciated that coming up. But yeah, man, I love poetry in general. If we're talking about new folks, I love Mariba. Uh, Mariba is really, really dope. The way that she writes is really cold. She's very folksy in a way that I appreciate. Like she plays acoustic guitar, writes all her stuff, produces a lot of her stuff, and really encourages people to like get back into writing and poetry. So she's really hard. I always love her. Other new folks I really appreciate. Jid is hard as a rapper. I love him. How he puts words together. I think he's one of the best rappers alive, and that he's out rapping a lot of y'all faves out here. Um, so he's dope. Love Raven Lene out of Chicago. She's a really great writer. Um, also want to shout out like some local folks. Vitamin C, dope.
Yeah, I was just about to
Uh,
ask you about that. Yeah.
yeah, Vitamin C is dope. Ariel J is dope. My homie, my little bro, K Amore is dope. Navia is really doing some great things. Um, yeah, there are a lot of really talented acts. Crystal Gem is dope. He's from here. Um, yeah, so they're all dope. Obviously, Crit. He was just on Megan's album. I was really happy to see it. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of talent coming out of Mississippi too.
Hmm.
That I always like to uplift and empower when I get an opportunity to, because there are so many folks. Another person, like I said, I'm just shouting out folks. Westside Boogie, hard. He came down to Jackson not too long ago, like last year. But he's always been one of my favorites. And so to see him at Kendrick's show, I was really happy to see it. So he's really dope. I always listen to him. Um, yeah, I love music. I love artists, and especially when folks are like doing their own things or like shifting the genre in different ways. I always like recognize and uplifted, and you know, y'all might hear a little bit more from me too in terms of like music and writing again. When I get an opportunity to, or when I find some space, I want to get back to creating more and more actively. So yeah, that was way more than three, but I had to kind of like I wanted to hit everybody.
Hey, we do shout outs here too. We definitely love shouting out people and giving other people their flowers. So that's big. Definitely gonna hold you to you finding your peace and your space, being able to get back into that groove again. Though I think this will be the last one.
Okay.
If you owned a library, what kind of
Uh-huh.
library would it be? A music library, a regular book library, or a movie/TV show library?
Lord, I'm a cheat like all three. I'm not gonna hold you. We're doing it like the
You're the second
Library of
person who's
Congress.
cheated. So.
Yeah, listen. Uh, I'm doing it like the Library of Congress. I think books and literature are really important. So I'm definitely doing a lot of like political books, but also like folklore books,
Mm.
historical books that are like important to Black people. Like my African American book of poetry is like the favorite book that I own. Uh, because so much of our history is like in those words. And whenever I need like inspiration to write, I always like go back there because it's beautiful. So having a library like that, I got like books here at the crib. When I get me a new crib, I definitely want to have like my own library and like have that set up. And thinking about music, yeah, music is just so important. And so many things are being lost. Like I got so many files of songs that just aren't on streaming, won't ever be on streaming. It's some of the most beautiful songs you've ever heard in your life. And if they're not held or like categorized or put into a space, they'll just be gone. You know what I mean? Um, and so having a music library, especially of like old or hard to find songs, is my thing. So I would definitely love to have that. And then for TV shows, another thing, like so many shows are out of syndication, aren't on streaming. We don't have access to them. Like trying to find really great black indie films has been really tough. Like I'm an indie. I love me a good indie romance film. That's my bag. Like if anybody ever needs black indie romance recommendations, I got you. But trying to find them on streaming is hard. Uh, yeah, you have to jump through hoops. Some folks have like really specific, like you have to go to this website at this time of the day and you got to request it. Like it's really tough. And so having folks like get access to some of those things more easily would be great. And also for like some of the shows that we really care about, like thinking about how many, like you can't watch Ben 10. Like they took Ben 10 off of streaming, and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Ben 10 is a big show, right? It's a huge show, but it's not streaming anymore. Like where can we go where like we can have all this information, or even like thinking about the original versions of shows like
Oh
Daria.
yeah.
Like Daria's a little, it's older, but like Daria was a show that came on in like the early 2000s, and when it premiered, it had all of this like really timely early 2000s music, like early 2000s rock bands. It was really like a period piece. But because like folks had to pay for that, like to keep the licensing up on streaming, you can't watch Daria in like the original version. And so like a lot of folks have taken time and like Google Drive to like compile and like put all those things together in their original form. And like having a library where you can watch something like as it was intended is really dope. Even thinking about how we alter things, like the original version of Star Wars is so hard to watch. Like it's so difficult to find because like George Lucas made all these alterations. Um, so having a library where you can access all of those things It would be really, really dope to me, just so we wouldn't have to worry about things not no longer being there, or things being pulled apart, or things becoming lost media. Um, yeah, that would be really dope. So I would definitely do it Library of Congress style, everything a hodgepodge, have it broke off into categories. You know what I mean? Um, yeah, like having music, having vinyls up in there. You know what I mean? Yeah, no, I would definitely like give me a while, and I will have a fire library. I would throw video
Yeah.
games in there too. You know what I'm saying? So many video games are cold, and you can't get them no more. Like you can't get any of the old Spider-Man games, dog. Like none of them, because they changed like trademarks, so you can't get them.
Yeah. Yeah. They have.
Like I'll have them all up in there. Like you wouldn't have to worry about a thing. Like going back, like I'm trying to play Spider-Man 2 on the Xbox, and that don't exist no more. So creating a space for those kind of things um, would be really, really important because not every game is going to get a remaster. Not every game is ever going to get a re-release. And so making sure that like the things that were like really big from our childhood, I'm able to play again. They had this really dope Matrix game called Path of Neo. It's one of the coldest games ever made. I'm not playing with you. Hard. Like you could slow down time, you could run up walls, you could do all the things. Can't find that game nowhere, anywhere. I would definitely put it in my library. Um, so yeah, no. Libraries are just really in general, just to give some shine to libraries. They're some of the most important things we have
Oh yeah.
in the culture and in the world. And there's a war on libraries right now, like very actively, very honestly. And they need to be protected. I think having giving folks access to literature, but also to safe spaces. Like folks use libraries to chill, to have access to internet, have access to like snacks or just a place to rest. And they continually pull funding from libraries. So yeah, actively investing in those things is going to be really, really important in the future, especially as there's this war on literacy, war on books
Mm-hmm.
for folks with marginalized identities. Like, yeah, so libraries definitely deserve that shine, and my library would be dope as hell. You'd love it, smell good, the vibes would be immaculate. I'd have flat screens up in there, you know what I'm saying? And you could just pop in, play a game, watch a whole movie, take back as many books as you need, as long as you return them. It'd be a nice little vibe.
It's probably it's probably the best answer I've heard. Seeing the fact that you encompassed all of it and made your own library setup too. So I should probably start asking how people would set up their library actually. So, but okay, I want to thank you for giving me some of your time today. Being able to share some of your stories, some of your experiences that you've gotten so far, and looking forward to definitely seeing more that you do and more of the lives that you continue to impact as well. So I certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, no, man, thank you. And also, this is just dope that you got a podcast, dog. Like, you're doing really great things. I think that the list of folks that you're having come on and be guests is really dope. And I hope that you're able to grow it and expand it. Yeah, we need spaces like this to highlight the folks here in the state that don't often get a lot of highlights. Like, seeing my little brother on the podcast is really dope, man. Like, he's 19, he's already like has something cemented that like
Mm-hmm.
folks can share and he can give his perspective on. So I really appreciate that. And also, you being my first real official podcast visit is hard. Like that's dope. So I'm working on some other podcast things I'm gonna guest on like sooner, like some friends and stuff. But I'm glad this is my first, especially somebody I went to high school with. Like for the audience, me and James go way back. You know what I'm saying? Like I've known James for a really long time. It don't feel like
Yeah,
it, but it's been like 10 years. Like
yeah, it's been a long time.
it's been like 10 years. So seeing you grow, develop, create space, has been really, really hard. Like, cause James was really, really cool in high school, man. That was my guy. He would do funny things sometimes. Like I'll never forget. I gotta bring it up since we here, man. Airball James, one of the
Oh
funniest
man.
moments. It was one of the funniest moments in high school, y'all. Listen, before I leave, I gotta tell this story. It's gonna be a bridge. We were having the our school basketball game, like faculty versus students, and faculty was tearing us up. It was bad. James, he goes in, he got a clear, wide open three, beautiful. Nobody's nobody's putting pressure on him. Nobody's blocking. He got a clear shot. We're all sitting here rooting for him. We're like, go James, shoot the ball. James, perfect form. Okay, beautiful. Looking like Kobe, Mike. Okay, the ball is arcing. Okay, I'm sitting here watching. I'm like, yo, he might have it. This might be the winner. This might change the tide of the whole game. Touches nothing. Okay, not rim, not net, not the backboard. It straight hits the ground, misses everything. It was the funniest. It was the funniest moment. All due respect to James, it was so funny. He was airball James for like 2 years, y'all. Like he was
Literally.
that little funny. So when I think about James, I think about moments like that. But nah, to see you grow, see you like continually invest in yourself and like building your own platform is like really really hard. So I'm excited to see what you do. Yeah, and I'm always happy. If you ever want me to come back or do something like that, I'm always happy to do so and to boost your work because this is dope, man. So I'm proud of you.
Thank you, thank you. Not gonna lie, I kind of forgot about that story, but I'm glad you brought it back to my memory.
Of course, man. I never forgot. That was a really that was a really great moment of like sophomore year of high school. It was hilarious. Yeah, man. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. I was really happy to be here. So yeah, really appreciate
All right, guys, this is more defined. I'll see y'all next time.
you. Peace.